Maya Torres had seen a lot in her 12 years as a social worker, but nothing could have prepared her for what happened that Tuesday afternoon. She was driving home from a client meeting, her mind occupied with paperwork and the dozen phone calls she still needed to return. The downtown area seemed busier than usual, with groups of people gathering on the sidewalks holding signs. A peaceful protest, she thought, nothing out of the ordinary for the city. She decided to grab coffee from her favorite shop before heading home. As she parked her car and stepped onto the street, the energy felt different. There was tension in the air, thick and uncomfortable. People were shouting, but not in the organized way protests usually went. Something was shifting, and Maya felt it in her gut. Within minutes, everything changed. She never found out exactly what triggered it. Maybe someone threw something, or maybe the crowd just reached a breaking point. But suddenly people were running in every direction. The organized protest had turned into chaos. Maya heard glass breaking somewhere behind her. Car alarms started blaring. People were screaming, pushing past each other in panic. Her first instinct was to get back to her car, to get out of there as fast as possible. But as she turned, she saw him. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, standing completely still near an overturned fruit cart. Oranges and apples were rolling across the pavement around his feet. He was holding a teddy bear that had seen better days, one of its ears hanging by a thread. And he wasn't moving. While everyone else ran and pushed and scrambled for safety, this child just stood there frozen. Maya's heart stopped. Where were his parents? She looked around frantically, searching for anyone who might be looking for him, calling his name. But the crowd was a blur of panic. Nobody was stopping. Nobody else seemed to see him, she didn't think. She just ran toward him. A man bumped hard into her shoulder, nearly knocking her down, but she kept going. When she reached the boy, she dropped to her knees in front of him. His eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down his face, but he wasn't making a sound. He was in shock. "Hey, sweetheart," Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm even though her own heart was racing. "I've got you. You're safe with me." The boy didn't respond, but when she held out her arms, he practically collapsed into them. She scooped him up and he wrapped his small arms around her neck so tightly she could barely breathe. His whole body was shaking. Maya pressed his face against her shoulder, shielding him from the chaos around them. She needed to find shelter, somewhere away from the stampeding crowd. A trash can went rolling past them. Someone's shopping bag flew through the air, its contents scattering. The noise was overwhelming, sirens mixing with shouts and the sound of things breaking. She spotted a doorway to an old office building about 20 feet away. It looked recessed enough to offer some protection. Maya held the boy tighter and pushed through the crowd, using her body as a shield. Someone's elbow caught her in the ribs. Another person stepped on her foot. But she kept moving, kept protecting the child in her arms. They made it to the doorway, and Maya pressed them both against the door, making herself as small as possible while covering the boy completely. She could feel his little heart beating frantically against her chest. His teddy bear was squashed between them, but he wouldn't let it go. "It's okay," she whispered into his hair, over and over. "I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." The chaos seemed to last forever, though it was probably only 10 or 15 minutes. Police arrived in force, their voices booming through megaphones, trying to restore order. Slowly, gradually, the crowd began to thin. People scattered down side streets or into buildings. The immediate danger was passing, but Maya stayed in that doorway, still holding the boy, until she was certain it was safe. When she finally felt like she could move, she looked down at the child in her arms. He had stopped shaking, but his face was still buried in her shoulder. His fingers were clutched in her jacket so tightly that his knuckles were white. "Hey," she said softly, "can you look at me?" Slowly, the boy lifted his head. His face was streaked with tears and dirt. His eyes were brown, deep and sad in a way no 4-year-old's eyes should be. He looked at her for a long moment, then glanced around at the destruction surrounding them. Broken glass glittered on the pavement. An abandoned shoe lay in the middle of the street. Papers were blowing everywhere, caught in the wind. "Where's your mom?" Maya asked gently. "Where's your dad? Can you tell me?" The boy just stared at her. His lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. He clutched his teddy bear tighter. Maya felt a wave of concern wash over her. This wasn't just fear. Something else was going on with this child. She'd worked with enough traumatized kids to recognize the signs. He was shutting down, retreating somewhere inside himself where the scary things couldn't reach him. She needed to get him somewhere safe, somewhere she could figure out who he belonged to and get him back to his family. They had to be looking for him. They had to be terrified. "Okay," she said, making her voice as warm and reassuring as she could. "We're going to find your family. But first, let's get away from here. Is that okay?" The boy didn't nod or shake his head, but he didn't resist when she stood up, keeping him in her arms. Her car was still parked on the next block. If she could just get him there, she could drive to the police station. They'd know what to do. They'd have reports of missing children. His parents were probably already there, filing a report, desperate for information. Walking through the aftermath of the riot was like moving through a war zone. Store windows were smashed. Trash and debris covered the streets. A few other people were emerging from wherever they'd taken shelter, looking dazed and confused. Maya kept her eyes forward and walked as quickly as she could while carrying the boy. He was heavier than he looked, but she barely noticed. Her adrenaline was still pumping. All she could think about was getting him to safety, getting him help. When they reached her car, Maya had to figure out how to get her keys from her pocket while still holding him. "Can you stand next to me for just a second?" she asked. The boy's grip tightened. He wasn't letting go. Maya understood. She managed to balance him on one hip while she fumbled for her keys with her free hand. Her fingers were shaking, whether from fear or exhaustion or both, she wasn't sure. Finally, she got the door open. She carefully placed the boy in the passenger seat and buckled him in. He was too small for the seat, really needed a car seat, but she didn't have one. She'd have to drive carefully. The boy hugged his teddy bear and stared straight ahead, still not speaking. Maya got into the driver's seat and started the engine. As she pulled away from the curb, she glanced over at her small passenger. He looked so lost, so alone. Something about him tugged at her heart in a way she couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was just the social worker in her, the part that had dedicated her life to protecting vulnerable children. Or maybe it was something more. She noticed a lion patch on his jacket, worn but still visible. "Is that your favorite animal?" she asked, trying to engage him. "Lions are pretty cool." The boy's eyes flickered to his jacket, then back to the window. "Still no words. I'm Maya," she said. "And until we find out your real name, maybe I'll call you Leo, because of your lion. Would that be okay?" For the first time, the smallest hint of something crossed the boy's face. Not quite a smile, but not complete emptiness either. It was enough to give Maya hope that he was still in there, still reachable. As she drove toward the police station, Maya had no idea that this moment, this decision to protect a stranger's child, was about to change her entire life. She had no way of knowing that the boy sitting next to her, silent and scared, was connected to her in ways that would take months to uncover. She couldn't have imagined that saving him from that riot would lead her to answers about her own past, her own family, her own story. All she knew was that this child needed help, and she was going to make sure he got it. The police station was overwhelmed. When Maya walked through the doors carrying Leo, she joined a line of at least 15 people, all with their own riot-related emergencies. Some had injuries that needed reporting. Others were there to file claims about damaged property. Everyone looked shaken, tired, scared. Maya waited for nearly 40 minutes before she could speak to an officer. Leo stayed quiet the entire time, pressed against her side on the hard plastic chairs. He still wouldn't let go of her hand. His grip was surprisingly strong for such a small boy. When they finally reached the front desk, Officer Chen listened carefully to Maya's story. She was kind, patient, taking detailed notes. She asked Leo gentle questions, but he wouldn't respond to her either. Wouldn't even look at her. Just kept his eyes fixed on Maya's face. "We've had 3 calls already about missing children from the riot," Officer Chen said, pulling up her computer screen. "But they've all been resolved. Parents and kids reunited within the first hour. Let me check if there have been any new reports." Maya felt her stomach knot with worry. Why hadn't anyone reported this boy missing? Where were his parents? She looked down at Leo, at his dirty face and torn jacket, at the worn teddy bear he clutched like a lifeline. Something wasn't right about this whole situation. "Nothing yet," Officer Chen said, frowning at her screen. "But it's still early. Sometimes families get separated and don't realize it immediately, especially if there are multiple children. Or they might be at the hospital dealing with injuries. Give it a few hours." A few hours turned into a full day, then 2 days, then a week. Officer Chen made sure Leo's photo was everywhere. Local news ran his picture every evening. Social media posts were shared thousands of times. The image of the small boy with the sad brown eyes and the threadbare teddy bear became the face of the riot, a symbol of innocence caught in chaos. But nobody came forward to claim him. Nobody called the tip line. Nobody recognized him. It was as if he'd appeared out of nowhere with no family, no history, no life before that moment. Maya found him frozen in the street. The authorities placed Leo in a temporary children's facility while they continued searching for his family. Maya visited him every single day after work. She told herself it was just part of her job, that she'd do this for any child in his situation. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Something about Leo had gotten under her skin, into her heart. During her visits, Maya began to notice things about him. He was smart, incredibly smart. He organized his toys in perfect straight lines, arranging them by size and color. He could complete puzzles meant for children twice his age. But he still barely spoke, offering only whispered words here and there, and only to Maya. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the riot, Maya was sitting with Leo in the facility's play area. She was wearing the jade bracelet her grandmother had given her years ago, the one she wore almost every day. It was special to her, one of the few connections she had to her mother's side of the family. Her mother had passed away 5 years earlier, taking most of their family history with her. Leo reached out and touched the bracelet, his small fingers tracing the carved Chinese characters on the jade. Maya watched him, curious about his sudden interest. Then Leo did something that made her heart stop. He whispered the characters, reading them in perfect Mandarin. Maya stared at him in shock. She barely knew any Mandarin herself. Her mother had spoken it when Maya was very young, but after her grandmother died, her mother had stopped using the language. Said it made her too sad. Maya only knew what the characters on the bracelet meant because her mother had told her once. Love endures through all things. Leo, Maya said softly, trying to keep the surprise out of her voice. Do you speak Chinese? The boy looked up at her with those deep brown eyes. For a moment she thought he might actually answer. His lips moved, forming words that never quite made it to sound. Then he looked down again, back to the bracelet. That night Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about Leo, about those Chinese characters, about his silence and his intelligence and the mystery of where he came from. Who was this child? Why did looking at him sometimes feel like looking into a mirror, seeing something familiar she couldn't quite name? The next day she met with Detective Rodriguez, who'd been assigned to Leo's case. I think he might speak Mandarin, Maya told him, or at least understand it. That might help narrow down where he's from, who his family might be. Detective Rodriguez added it to his notes, but Maya could see the frustration in his face. They'd run Leo's fingerprints through every database. They'd checked missing children reports from neighboring states. They'd consulted with immigration services. Nothing. It was like the boy had simply materialized during that riot. I've been doing this job for 20 years, Rodriguez said, leaning back in his chair. Never seen anything like it. A child this young in a major city during a massive public event and nobody's looking for him? It doesn't make sense, but life rarely made sense. Maya knew that better than most. She'd spent her career working with kids who'd fallen through the cracks, children the system had failed, families that had broken apart in ways nobody could have predicted. Still, this felt different. This felt important in a way she couldn't explain. As the weeks turned into a month, Maya made a decision. She started the process to become Leo's foster parent. The facility director warned her not to get too attached, told her that these cases usually resolve themselves eventually. A family member would turn up or a piece of evidence would break the case open. But Maya didn't care. Leo needed stability, needed someone who cared about him, needed more than a room in a facility filled with other lost children. The paperwork was extensive. Background checks, home inspections, interviews with her supervisor, financial records. Maya went through it all without hesitation. She cleared out the spare room in her small apartment, the one she'd been using for storage. She painted it a soft blue, put up shelves for books and toys. She bought a bed with dinosaur sheets because she'd noticed Leo liked to arrange the toy dinosaurs in the facility's play area. During this time, Leo slowly began to open up to her. He still didn't talk much and never around anyone else, but with Maya, he'd whisper simple things. Hungry. Cold. Stay. That last one broke her heart every time. as if he was afraid she'd leave him like everyone else had. One evening, when Maya was reading to him before bedtime at the facility, Leo climbed into her lap and pressed his head against her chest. "Maya, Mama," he whispered so quietly she almost didn't hear it. She froze, her throat tight with emotion. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "Maya, Mama." A little louder this time. Maya wrapped her arms around him, blinking back tears. "Yeah," she whispered into his hair. "Yeah, I'm here. Maya, Mama is here." It was during one of Leo's medical checkups that Maya learned something that made the situation even more complicated. The pediatrician, Dr. Patel, called her into his office with a serious expression. Leo had a blood disorder, something rare that required regular monitoring and occasional treatment. Nothing life-threatening if properly managed, but it needed attention, needed someone who could coordinate his care and make sure he got to his appointments. Without his medical history, "We're working in the dark," Dr. Patel explained. "I've prescribed what I can based on his current blood work, but it would help tremendously to know if there's a family history, what treatments he might have had before, any medications he was on." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling heavier on her shoulders, but she also felt something else, something fierce and protective. This child needed her. Whether he was officially hers or not, he needed her. It was one of the nurses, a kind woman named Rita, who'd taken an interest in Leo's case, who made the suggestion. "Have you thought about DNA testing?" she asked Maya one day. "I know they use it for genealogy now, finding relatives and such. Might be worth a shot, even if his immediate family doesn't turn up. Maybe there are cousins or aunts or uncles out there who could provide some information." Maya hadn't thought of that. The police had focused on fingerprints and missing persons reports, but DNA testing for genealogy was different. It was a long shot, but what did they have to lose? She discussed it with Detective Rodriguez, who agreed it was worth trying. "We'll submit his sample to a few databases," he said. "Sometimes people find relatives they didn't even know existed. Maybe we'll get lucky." Then, almost as an afterthought, Rita had added, "You should do one too. Lots of people discover interesting things about their own heritage. And who knows, maybe you'll find some long-lost cousins." Maya had laughed it off at first. She knew her heritage, or at least she thought she did. Her mother had been adopted as a child in China during a complicated time, brought to the States by an American family. She'd grown up knowing almost nothing about her biological roots. Maya's father was from Mexico, and she'd grown up feeling connected to that side of her family. The Chinese part of her heritage had always been a mystery, a door her mother had kept mostly closed. But something made her agree. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was a desire to understand more about where she came from, especially now that her mother was gone and couldn't answer questions anymore. Or maybe on some level she didn't fully understand, she felt like it mattered, like there was something she needed to know. The DNA kits arrived in the mail. Simple cheek swabs, easy to do. Maya did Leo's first, being careful and gentle, making it a game so he wouldn't be scared. Then she did her own, feeling a little silly but also intrigued. What could it hurt? They mailed the samples off together, and then there was nothing to do but wait. The results would take several weeks, maybe longer. In the meantime, Maya's foster parent approval came through. Leo moved into her apartment officially, into the blue room with the dinosaur sheets and the shelves she'd filled with books. That first night, after she'd tucked him into bed and kissed his forehead and promised she'd be right in the next room, Maya stood in her own bedroom and looked at the photo of her mother on the dresser. It had been taken years ago, before she'd gotten sick. Her mother was smiling, her eyes warm and kind. Around her neck was the jade pendant that matched Maya's bracelet. "I wish you were here, Mom," Maya whispered to the photo. "I wish you could meet him. I think you'd love him." She had no idea how true that statement would turn out to be. No idea that the DNA results waiting to be processed in a lab somewhere would reveal a truth so impossible, so miraculous that it would change everything she thought she knew about family, about fate, about the invisible threads that connect us all. For now, she just knew that she was falling in love with a little boy who called her Maya Mama, a boy who organized his toys in perfect lines and read Chinese characters on jade bracelets and held her hand like she was his whole world. And maybe, Maya thought as she finally climbed into bed, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Life with Leo settled into a rhythm that Maya hadn't expected but found herself cherishing. Every morning she'd wake him up with gentle words and tickles. He'd wrap his arms around her neck and press his face into her shoulder, still warm from sleep. Then they'd have breakfast together, usually cereal or toast, with Leo carefully arranging his food in patterns before eating it. Maya had learned to build extra time into their mornings for this ritual. She'd learned a lot of things about Leo in those first few weeks. He needed routines, needed predictability. Change upset him in ways that most kids his age could handle. But within his routines, within the safe space Maya created for him, he was blooming. He talked more now, though still mostly in whispers and only with her. He'd tell her about the pictures he drew, about the games he wanted to play, about whether he wanted apple juice or water with his lunch. Simple things, but to Maya they felt like victories. Each word was proof that he was healing, that he was learning to trust again. The hardest part was taking him to his medical appointments. Every 2 weeks they had to go back to Dr. Patel for blood work and monitoring. Leo hated needles, would cry and shake and cling to Maya like he was drowning. She'd hold him in her lap, let him bury his face in her shirt, and whisper to him that she was right there, that she'd never let go, that he was so brave. His counts are stable, Dr. Patel told her after one appointment, about 6 weeks after Leo had moved in. Whatever treatment he was getting before seems to have been working. We're basically maintaining the same protocol, but I wish I knew more about his history. This disorder often has a genetic component. If we knew his family medical history, we could better predict any complications. Maya nodded, the familiar frustration rising in her chest. Every time someone mentioned Leo's unknown past, she felt it. The mystery of who he was, where he came from, why nobody had claimed him. It hung over them like a cloud that wouldn't clear. But there were good moments too. Beautiful moments that made everything worthwhile. Like the evening Leo finished his first puzzle book, a collection of mazes and word searches she'd bought him. He'd looked up at her with such pride in his eyes, holding the book out to show her. All done, he'd whispered. And Maya had pulled him into a hug and told him how smart he was, how proud she was of him. Or the time they went to the park and Leo actually played with another child, a little girl who'd offered to share her ball. It had only lasted about 10 minutes before Leo had retreated back to Maya's side, but it was progress. He was learning that the world could be safe, that not everything was scary. Maya's co-workers at the social services office had been incredibly supportive. They covered for her when she needed to leave early for Leo's appointments. They brought over hand-me-down clothes and toys for him. One of her colleagues, Patricia, had even knitted him a small blanket in blue and green, his favorite colors. "You're doing a good thing," Patricia told her one day over lunch. "That boy needed you. I can see it in the way he looks at you. You're his whole world right now." Maya had smiled, but inside she'd felt the weight of that responsibility. Being someone's whole world was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. What if she messed up? What if she wasn't enough? She'd worked with so many broken families, seen so many ways that adults failed the children who depended on them. She was determined not to be another person who let Leo down. About 8 weeks after they'd sent in the DNA tests, Maya had mostly forgotten about them. She was too busy living life, taking care of Leo, navigating the complicated process of being a first-time foster parent. So when her phone rang one Tuesday afternoon and the caller ID showed the name of the DNA testing company, it took her a moment to remember what it was about. "Hello?" she answered, juggling her phone while trying to open her apartment door with Leo holding one hand and a bag of groceries in the other. "Ms. Torres? This is Jennifer Williams from Gene Connect. I'm calling about your DNA results. Do you have a moment to talk?" Sure," Maya said, finally getting the door open. She set the groceries down and helped Leo take off his shoes. "What did you find?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Ms. Torres, we've identified some matches in our database that we'd like to discuss with you. Would it be possible for you to come into our office? Preferably soon?" Something in the woman's voice made Maya's stomach tighten. "Is something wrong? Is it about Leo? Did you find his family? I think it would be better if we discuss this in person. Are you available tomorrow morning?" Maya felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. This was it. They'd found Leo's family. Someone was going to come and take him away. She knew it was possible, knew it might happen. But she'd let herself believe it wouldn't. She'd let herself imagine keeping him, adopting him officially, being his mom forever. "Ms. Torres, are you still there?" "Yes," Maya managed to say. "Yes, I can come tomorrow. 10 o'clock? That would be perfect. And Miss Torres? You might want to bring someone with you, a friend or family member. That scared Maya even more. Why would she need support? What were they going to tell her that was so serious she'd need someone there to help her handle it? That night, Leo sensed something was wrong. Kids always knew Maya had learned that in her years as a social worker. They picked up on the emotions adults tried to hide. At bedtime, Leo wouldn't let her leave his room. Every time she tried to stand up, he'd grab her hand and whisper, "Stay." Finally, Maya just lay down next to him on his small bed, her arm around him, her chin resting on the top of his head. "I'm not going anywhere, baby," she whispered. "Maya, Mama is right here." Eventually, he fell asleep, but Maya stayed where she was, listening to his breathing, feeling the weight of his small body against hers. In 2 months, this child had become everything to her. The thought of losing him was unbearable. The next morning, Maya called her friend and former college roommate Diana and asked if she could come with her to the appointment. Diana didn't ask questions, just said she'd be there. That was the kind of friend she was. They'd known each other for over 15 years, through all of life's ups and downs. If Maya needed her, she showed up. Maya arranged for Patricia to watch Leo during the appointment. She didn't want him there for whatever news she was about to receive. Kissing him goodbye that morning was one of the hardest things she'd done. He looked at her with those big brown eyes, and she had to fight to keep her own tears from falling. "I'll be back soon," she promised him. "Just a few hours. Patricia is going to play with you, okay?" Leo nodded, but he looked worried. "Come back?" "Always," Maya said, pulling him close. "I will always come back for you. Always." The Gene Connect office was in a sleek building downtown. Maya and Diana sat in the waiting room, Diana holding Maya's hand, neither of them saying much. Maya's mind was racing with possibilities. Had they found Leo's parents? Were they terrible people? Were they going to want him back? Would she have to fight for him? Would she lose? When Jennifer Williams finally called her name, Maya stood on shaky legs. Diana squeezed her hand one more time, and then Maya followed Jennifer down a hallway to a small conference room. There was another woman there, older, with kind eyes and graying hair. She introduced herself as Dr. Helen Chang, a genetic counselor. "Please sit down," Dr. Chang said gently. Maya sat, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Diana sat beside her, reaching over to take her hand again. Dr. Chang opened a folder on the table and looked at Maya with an expression that was both professional and deeply compassionate. "Ms. Torres, we ran your DNA sample and Leo's through our database, as well as several other genealogy databases we have access to. What we found is quite remarkable. Did you find his family?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "In a manner of speaking, yes," Dr. Chang said. "Ms. Torres, the tests show that you and Leo share approximately 25% of your DNA." Maya stared at her. The words didn't make sense. She repeated them in her head, trying to understand. 25%. What did that mean? "I don't understand," she finally said. Dr. Chang leaned forward. 25% DNA sharing typically indicates one of several relationships. In your case, based on the genetic markers, the most likely explanation is that Leo is your nephew. You share one parent with his mother or father. The room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped Diana's hand so hard she probably hurt her. But Diana didn't pull away. "That's not possible," Maya whispered. "I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child." "Not according to your DNA," Dr. Chang said gently. "You have or had a half-sibling, someone who shared one biological parent with you." Maya's mind was reeling. Her mother had been adopted, yes, but she'd never mentioned having biological siblings, never talked about other family in China. And her father, he'd come from a big family. She knew all her aunts and uncles on that side. There were no mysterious siblings there. "This has to be a mistake," Maya said. But even as she said it, she remembered Leo tracing the Chinese characters on her bracelet. She remembered his perfect Mandarin. She remembered how sometimes when he looked at her a certain way, it felt like looking in a mirror. "We ran the tests 3 times to be sure," Jennifer said. "There's no mistake. Leo is biologically related to you. He's your nephew." Diana made a sound beside her, somewhere between a gasp and a laugh. "Oh my God, Maya," but Maya couldn't speak. Couldn't process what she was hearing. She'd saved a stranger's child from a riot, a random act of courage, being in the right place at the right time. Except it wasn't random. It wasn't a stranger. It was family. It was her own blood, her own sister's child. How? She finally managed to ask. How is this possible? Dr. Chang pulled out several printed papers covered in genetic charts and percentages that Maya couldn't begin to understand. Based on the DNA markers, the sibling connection is on your maternal side. Your mother's side. Do you know anything about your mother's biological family? Maya shook her head, tears starting to fall now. She was adopted as a baby. From China. She never knew her biological family. She never talked about them. Then this is likely a sibling she never knew she had, Dr. Chang said softly. It's more common than you might think, especially in cases of international adoption during certain periods. Families were separated, records were lost or never existed. Children ended up in different countries with no way to find each other. Maya looked down at her hands, at the jade bracelet on her wrist. Her grandmother had given it to her mother. Her mother had given it to her. And Leo had read the characters carved into it, characters that meant love endures through all things. His mother, Maya said, looking up at Dr. Chang. Where is she? Does she know about this? Does she know Leo is with me? The compassion in Dr. Chang's eyes deepened and Maya felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming before the words were even spoken. We flagged Leo's situation with the police, Jennifer said quietly. Given that he was found during the riot and no family ever claimed him, they've been doing additional investigation. Ms. Torres, they believe they've identified Leo's mother. Her name was Lily Chen. She was at the riot that day. Was, Maya whispered. I'm so sorry, Dr. Chang said. She died during the riot. She was struck by a vehicle in the chaos. She didn't have any identification on her, and her body wasn't identified until recently. They matched her DNA to Leo's. The room went silent. Maya couldn't breathe. She'd had a sister she never knew existed. And that sister had died the same day Maya saved her son. The same day she found Leo standing alone in the street, terrified and lost. He was there, Maya said, the realization hitting her. His mother brought him to the riot. And then she died, and he was alone, and I found him. Yes, Dr. Chang confirmed. Maya put her face in her hands and sobbed. Diana wrapped her arms around her, holding her while she cried. All this time she'd been taking care of her own nephew, her own family, her mother's daughter's son, the last living connection to a sister she would never know, could never meet, could never thank for giving life to this incredible little boy. What do I do? Maya asked through her tears. What do I do now? Dr. Chang reached across the table and touched Maya's hand gently. You keep loving him, she said, just like you've been doing. He's your family, Maya. He always was. Maya sat in her car outside the Gene Connect building for almost an hour after leaving the appointment. Diana had driven because Maya's hands were shaking too badly to hold the steering wheel. Her whole world had just shifted on its axis and she didn't know how to process it. You have a nephew, Diana said softly, not for the first time. Maya, you have family you didn't know about, but that wasn't quite right. Maya had known Leo for 2 months now. She'd known him as the scared little boy she'd saved, then as her foster son, then as the child she'd fallen in love with. What she hadn't known was that saving him hadn't been a coincidence. That fate or destiny or whatever you wanted to call it had put her in that exact spot at that exact moment to find her own sister's child. I need to see him, Maya finally said. I need to go home. Diana nodded and started the car. During the drive back to Maya's apartment, Detective Rodriguez called. He'd been informed of the DNA results and wanted to meet with Maya to discuss what they'd learned about Lily Chen. Tomorrow, Maya told him, her voice hoarse from crying. Can it wait until tomorrow? I need time. I need to be with Leo right now. Rodriguez agreed. He understood, he said. This was a lot to process. The investigation could wait one more day. When they arrived at the apartment, Patricia opened the door with a concerned expression. Is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya almost laughed at that. In a way, she had. The ghost of a sister she never knew. I'm okay, she managed to say. Where's Leo? Playing in his room. He's been asking for you. Maya found Leo sitting on the floor surrounded by his toy dinosaurs, arranging them in careful rows. When he saw her, his whole face lit up and he scrambled to his feet and ran to her. Maya scooped him up, holding him so tight he squirmed. Maya, mama, he said, pushing back to look at her face. His expression changed to worry when he saw her red eyes. Sad? No, baby, Maya said, fresh tears falling. But these were different tears. Not grief, not shock, but something else. Joy, maybe, wonder. I'm not sad. I'm happy. So happy. She didn't know how to explain it to him. Didn't even know if she should try. He was only 4 years old. Would he understand what it meant that they were related by blood? That his mother had been her sister? That they were family in a way that went beyond the bonds they'd already formed? After Diana and Patricia left, promising to check on her later, Maya spent the evening just being with Leo. They had dinner together, his favorite chicken nuggets cut into small pieces. They read books together, 3 of them because he couldn't choose just one. They took a bath and Leo played with his rubber ducks while Maya washed his hair, gentle and careful. But her mind kept drifting to Lily Chen, her sister. Her half-sister, technically, but that distinction didn't seem to matter. They'd shared a mother. The same woman who'd given birth to Maya had also given birth to Lily. And somehow, they'd ended up in different countries, living completely separate lives, never knowing the other existed. That night, after Leo was asleep, Maya pulled out her laptop and searched for information about Lily Chen. It felt wrong, invasive somehow, but she needed to know. She needed to understand who her sister had been. The information was sparse and heartbreaking. Lily had been 32 when she died, only 2 years younger than Maya. She'd immigrated to the United States 7 years ago on a work visa that had eventually expired. After that, her life seemed to have spiraled. There were records of emergency room visits, addresses at homeless shelters, a few arrests for minor offenses. The picture painted was of a woman struggling to survive, struggling with addiction, struggling to care for a child when she could barely care for herself. Maya found one photo, a driver's license picture from 6 years ago. She stared at it for a long time. Lily's eyes were brown like Leo's, like her own. Her face was thin, tired-looking even in the official photo, but Maya could see the resemblance. The shape of her jaw, the way her eyebrows curved. It was like looking at a distorted version of herself. She wondered what Lily's life had been like in China. Had she known she had a sister somewhere? Had their mother told her? Or had she died before she could share that information? There were so many questions that would never be answered now. Maya met with Detective Rodriguez the next day at his office, leaving Leo with Patricia again. Rodriguez had a thick file on his desk. Everything they'd been able to piece together about Lily Chen's last months. She'd been living in a shelter on the east side, he explained. The staff there told us she was trying to get clean, trying to get stable for Leo's sake. She loved that boy. Everyone who knew her said that. She might have been struggling with a lot, but she loved her son. Maya felt tears sting her eyes again. Why was she at the riot? According to the shelter staff, she was looking for social services. She wanted help. She knew Leo needed stability, medical care, things she couldn't provide. The riot started at what was supposed to be a peaceful demonstration for more social services funding. Wrong place, wrong time. She was trying to do the right thing, Maya whispered. She was trying to get help for him. Rodriguez nodded. The medical examiner says she died quickly. She wouldn't have suffered. And before she died, she made sure Leo was safe. Security footage from nearby businesses shows her pushing him away from the road, away from the danger right before she was hit. Her last act was protecting her son. Maya covered her face with her hands. Lily had saved Leo first, and then Maya had found him. 2 women, sisters who never knew each other, both protecting the same child in the same moment. It was too much, too big, too impossible to be coincidence. What happens now? Maya asked. With the foster care case? Does this change things? It simplifies them, Rodriguez said. Your blood family. The court will look favorably on that when you file for adoption, which I assume you're going to do. Of course, Maya said without hesitation. He's my nephew. He's my family. I'm keeping him. Rodriguez smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Good, that kid got lucky the day you found him. But Maya didn't think it was luck. She thought about her mother, about the jade bracelet, about Chinese characters that meant love endures through all things. She thought about how her mother had always said that family found its way back together, even when it seemed impossible. Maybe especially when it seemed impossible. The story broke 3 days later. Maya never found out exactly how it happened. Maybe someone at the police department talked to a reporter. Maybe someone at Gene Connect did. Either way, by Thursday evening, her phone was ringing off the hook with calls from news stations wanting interviews. The headline on the local news was dramatic. Woman saves child in riot. Discovers he's her nephew. The story spread fast. By Friday morning, it was national news. By Saturday, it was international. Maya's small apartment became a fortress. Reporters camped outside, hoping for a statement, hoping for photos. Her phone filled with messages from people she hadn't talked to in years, distant relatives, old friends from high school. Everyone wanted to know about the miracle story, about the impossible coincidence that had brought aunt and nephew together. Diana became her gatekeeper, screening calls, turning away reporters at the door. You don't have to talk to any of them if you don't want to, she told Maya. This is your story, your family. You don't owe anyone anything. But Maya knew that wasn't entirely true. The public was invested in this story now. Leo's face, that photo from the police reports of him looking scared and lost, had become iconic. People had followed his story from the beginning, wondering if his family would ever be found. Now they knew the ending was even more remarkable than anyone could have imagined. So Maya agreed to one interview. Just one, with a local journalist named Rebecca Ortiz who'd been covering the story from the start and who promised to be respectful, to focus on the human element rather than sensationalizing the tragedy. They filmed it at Maya's apartment with Leo there but off camera. Rebecca asked good questions, gentle questions. She asked about the moment Maya found Leo in the riot, about what it was like learning they were related, about how she felt knowing her sister had died saving him. It's like grief and joy tangled together, Maya said, trying to find the right words. I'm grieving for a sister I never got to meet, for all the years we should have had together. But I'm also grateful beyond words that I have Leo, that I get to raise him, love him, tell him about his mother as he grows up. She gave me the greatest gift even though she never knew it. Do you think it was fate? Rebecca asked. That you were the one who found him? Maya looked over at Leo, who was playing quietly with his dinosaurs in the corner. He looked up at her and smiled, that beautiful smile that made everything worthwhile. I don't know about fate, Maya said, but I know that love is stronger than distance, stronger than time, stronger than all the things that should have kept us apart. My mother used to say that family always finds its way back together. I think she was right. The interview aired on Sunday evening. Maya watched it with Leo in her lap, his head resting against her chest. When it was over, she turned off the TV and held him close. Do you know how special you are? She whispered to him. Leo looked up at her with those brown eyes, so much like her own, so much like their mother's. Special? So special, Maya confirmed. You know why? He shook his head. Because you brought our family back together. Your mama and I were supposed to know each other, but we never got the chance. But you're here and you're part of both of us. You're the best parts of both of us, and that makes you the most special person in the whole world. Leo thought about this for a moment. Then he whispered, Love you, Maya mama. I love you too, baby. So much. The next week, Maya received a call from the county courthouse. Her adoption petition had been fast-tracked given the circumstances. The judge wanted to meet with her and Leo to finalize everything. It was happening faster than anyone expected, but nobody was complaining. This child belonged with his family, with his aunt, with the woman who'd saved his life before she even knew he was hers to save. Maya also received something else in the mail. A package from an address in California. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter was from an elderly woman named Helen Liu. She explained that she'd seen the news story, had recognized Lily's photo. Helen had known Lily's mother, Maya's mother, back in China 40 years ago. Your mother's name was May, the letter said. We were friends before the troubles, before she had to give up her daughters. She gave birth to you first, then to Lily 2 years later. The separations during that time were cruel and random. You ended up adopted to America. Lily stayed in an orphanage in China until she was older. Your mother grieved for both of you every day until she died. She never stopped hoping you would find each other somehow. Attached to the letter was a photo. Maya stared at it through tears. 2 young women, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. One of them was clearly a younger version of Helen. The other took Maya's breath away. She looked like Maya, like Lily, like Leo. She was their mother, the woman who'd connected them all. On the back of the photo, written in faded ink in Chinese characters, was a message. Maya had to use a translation app to read it. May my daughters find each other when I cannot. May they know they were loved. May they know family is forever. Maya held the photo to her chest and cried. Her mother had known. She'd known about both her daughters and had been separated from both of them. And even though she'd never been able to bring her family back together in life, somehow, impossibly, she'd done it after death, through Leo, through this little boy who carried both her daughters' blood in his veins. That night, Maya placed the photo in a frame on the shelf in Leo's room, right next to the bed. She pointed to the woman in the picture. That's your grandmother, she told Leo. Her name was May. She loved your mama and she loved me even though we were apart. And she would have loved you so, so much. Leo looked at the photo for a long time. Then he touched it gently, like he'd touched Maya's bracelet that first time. Pretty, he whispered. Yes, Maya agreed. She was beautiful. And you know what? You have her eyes. And her smile. You're part of her, Leo. You're part of all of us. You're the reason we're a family again. She didn't know if he understood, not really. But someday he would. Someday she'd tell him the whole story. About the riot and the coincidence that wasn't a coincidence. About love that endured through all things. About family that found its way back together against all odds. For now, it was enough to hold him close and know that he was home. That they both were. The interview with Rebecca Ortiz had reached far more people than Maya ever imagined possible. Within days, clips of it were being shared across every social media platform. News outlets around the world picked up the story. The headlines varied, but they all carried the same sense of wonder. The riot that reunited a family. DNA test reveals impossible truth. Love finds a way, aunt and nephew's miraculous connection. But it wasn't just the headlines that spread. It was the raw emotion in Maya's voice when she talked about her sister. It was the security footage someone had obtained showing Maya shielding Leo during the riot, her body wrapped around his, protecting him with everything she had. It was the photo of them together now, Leo's small hand in hers, both of them smiling at the camera with identical expressions of quiet joy. People couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop sharing, couldn't stop crying at the impossibility of it all. In a world that often felt dark and divided, here was a story that reminded everyone that miracles still happened, that love was real. That family meant something deeper than anyone could fully understand. Maya's mailbox filled with letters from around the country, around the world. A woman in Japan wrote about being separated from her own sister during World War II and never finding her again. A man in Germany shared how he discovered through DNA testing that his best friend of 20 years was actually his cousin. A grandmother in Ohio sent a check for $100 with a note that said simply, "For Leo's future. God bless your family." The outpouring of love and support was overwhelming, but it also brought challenges. Maya had to take a leave of absence from work because she couldn't walk down the street without being recognized. Strangers would stop her to share their own stories, to tell her how much her journey had touched them. Some would cry. Some would ask to take photos. All of them meant well, but it was exhausting. What surprised Maya most was how the story seemed to reach people who needed hope. Letters came from foster children who said seeing Leo's story made them believe they might find family someday. Adults who'd been adopted wrote about feeling seen and validated in their own searches for biological relatives. People who'd lost loved ones talked about how the story reminded them that death doesn't end love, that connections persist in ways we can't always see.